Hey, I'm Joe Connolly from WCBS News Radio, and I want to introduce you to the smartest, best expert I know on changing jobs and improving your career, Steve Greenberg, the host of Your Next Job on WCBS. And Steve will also tell business owners suggestions on knowing which candidates to hire. So, Steve, let's start, and Neil A. Carousso, the producer, will join us in this discussion too. I would ask you first, Steve, what suggestions you would have for business owners who now may be able to hire people who have left voluntarily or not, larger companies who might want to come to work for a smaller business.
Right. Joe, it's great to be with you. And you're right. We are seeing a lot of great talent out there that is not working for big companies anymore, either because of layoffs or they don't want to commute anymore, or they're ready to make a change to work more local, in a more local way. And I think that what small businesses can do is to try to get beyond the resume. I mean, try to look beyond the brand name employer on that piece of paper, because it's sort of easy to be misled by that. Just because they work for one well-known company doesn't mean they're going to be a great match for you. And the way you can dig deep and figure out if this person really is a good match is beyond the simple hard skills, is to ask questions that go to their soft skills, behavioral questions that get them talking about things where you can get an indication if they're going to be a good fit or not. Things like, tell us about a time where you had to work in a team and somebody was a problem. How did you deal with that person who was, causing trouble? Or tell us about a time where you couldn't meet a deadline and what did you do in response to it? Give us an example. You had to juggle several different matters at the same time. And those kind of behavioral questions will reveal things that you can't see just in their resume.
Stephen, have you ever heard about a case where somebody applied for a job that they only wanted because they needed a job? And is there a way to weed out, again, I guess it goes back to these behavioral questions that you mentioned. How do you weed out someone who really just wants to work for you as a last resort?
Right. Well, I think there's several key factors here. Number one is that employers should be careful to even interview candidates who are just sending out generic resumes. Because what is it? A generic resume tells the company, really, if you're really looking at it carefully, I'm not that interested in working for you. I'm just sending out this resume to 20 companies and I'm just hoping to get lucky. I'm playing the lottery, and I'm figuring
That's a great point.
Right? The more tickets I buy, the better my chances are of winning. But that's not very satisfactory from the employer's point of view. The employer, a smart employer, a savvy employer, will look to resumes that are tailored to their particular job. A candidate who went to the trouble of researching the company, research the specifics of the job that they're applying for, and then tailored their resume to that specific job. That tells the employer loud and clear, this person really cares about my company, cares about getting this particular job, and that's somebody I want to talk to.
How can employers conduct interviews better? How can they get better candidates right now, especially during the pandemic?
Well, so it's really hard. Interviewing is an art that needs to be perfected over time, and many small business owners are wearing so many hats. They're so busy with so many different things. And I know it's been said on these airways many times, but small business owners truly are the unsung heroes of the American economy. And I mean, they're really incredible. They have to not only run a successful business, beat their competition, deal with regulations, they're supposed to be great hiring at the same time, which seems very challenging. And many small business owners then adapt the attitude sort of like, you know what, I'll just walk into a room and I'll have a conversation. If I like the person and they have this sort of hard skills, I'll hire them. And that may work for some people. It doesn't work for a lot of people, because and the proof is in the data. The statistics show that the average person who's hired, even for a staff job, under the age of 35, will leave that job in less than 2 years. There's a tremendous amount of churn in the market. And I think part of that is because people are not very good. Companies aren't that great at interviewing, and candidates aren't that great at choosing what companies they should work for. And a better solution is doing more research on both sides of the issue before you make a commitment to somebody. And right, and so for employers, that means really testing whether or not that candidate really wants to work there. In ways like making sure the resume is tailored to them, not making it quite so easy for them to get a job offer. Depending on the job and the skill set, there's nothing wrong with employers sort of testing how badly somebody wants to work there by making the process a little bit more rigorous. I think companies that do that take a little bit longer to hire people, but the people they do hire stay longer. And that's really what you want as a small business owner, because there's a tremendous cost to churning, to having people quit and having to hire again.
And obviously it takes resources to train people. How do you try to gauge that interest? What are the types of questions that employers should ask then in the interview process?
Well, for example, if you're interviewing for a sales job, I'm always amazed at companies. There's a lot of interviewing going on right now for sales positions. It's a very hot area for small business and large business. But if you're interviewing, if you want someone to work for your company in sales, a good idea is to, rather than just have a standard interview offer, after you do one interview, let them sell you on themselves. Maybe you don't respond after the first interview to that particular candidate, and let the candidate show you how they knock down doors, because the way they knock down your door to get hired will reveal their skills in how good of a salesman they are if you hire them. And I think that's the kind of thing that can be very, very useful for companies. But for other jobs, you wouldn't want to do that. If you're hiring a tech person, for example, they're really in high demand, and once they're working for you, you don't want them banging down doors. You want them being very good at their job. So in that case, you would make it very easy for them to contact you. But again, you'd want to maybe give them some tests actually to see the work that they do before you hire them. Again, I'm always amazed. There's many small businesses that sort of hire based on faith, based on what they see on a resume. They assume a certain competency level without even bothering to try to test it at all. And there's nothing wrong as part of an interview process, if it's a tech job, asking somebody, hey, come on in. We're going to, for 2 hours, spend some time, or from home. For 2 hours, we're going to give you an assignment, and we're going to take a look at the work you've actually done before making an offer.
That's a good point. And one more before back to Joe. How, on the flip side, then, how do employees portray their skills in the interview process?
Well, again, it's up to them to demonstrate whatever skills they're selling. It's up to them to demonstrate that as part of the process. Again, if you're a salesperson, if I was a salesperson interviewing for a job, I wouldn't just do an interview and then just wait for them to call me back. I would follow up in meaningful ways, offering additional information about why I'm a great candidate. So I'm not only demonstrating why I'm a good hire, I'm demonstrating how, in fact, I am a great salesperson. If I was a tech person, after the interview, I would create a mock website or whatever for the company and show them exactly the kind of work that I do. One example that I've used before on air at CBS is I had a very famous basketball coach tell me that, I get emails all the time from candidates who say, my dream job is to work with you. He says, Steven, you know what happens after those emails? Nothing, but I'm not going to hire somebody then who doesn't want to act on their dreams. When I make my dreams come true, I don't wait for other people to make them come true for me. So he said one day somebody sent him that email, and then when he came home from a road trip at midnight, that person was waiting for them with their resume printed on a basketball. And so he said that person not only told me it was his dream to work for me, he showed me what that meant, and he hired that person. So I think it's up to candidates, to demonstrate, the skills and the passion that they have for that job. Don't just sit back and sort of wait for it to happen.
These are great examples. You're listening to Steven Greenberg, the host of Your Next Job on WCBS News Radio 880. And you, Steve, could sell these in a book for a lot of money. You can see and hear his reports on the website at WCBS880.com. There's one after another. You go to podcasts under the WCBS call letters, go to all audio, and Steve's audio reports are right there. They're all 60 seconds apiece, right under my 60-second daily business updates on the WCBS website. I love these examples. Tell us some other stories that you've heard about maybe an unlikely or surprising great hire that worked out great for the employee or for the company.
Well, I'll take one that
Any come to mind?
Well, there was one that I'm really happy about and most proud about when I was speaking at a place here in Connecticut a group of unemployed people. And there was this one gentleman, we're doing a Q&A, this is a couple of years ago. And he said, I am a really great chef, but nobody will give me a chance. And I said, well, what is your best dish? What do you make best? He said, I make an amazing kind of a cake. I forget the kind of cake it was. I'm like, well, the next time you see a great job, why don't you make the cake and in icing, write part of your resume and icing on the top of the cake, which is exactly what he did. And he got hired. He wrote to me afterwards, and and it worked out fantastic. In a way that obviously just sending a resume out, describing his experience never would have conveyed. And I think if people really challenge themselves, I think there's something like that. Everybody has their version of sending a cake, and just spend a little bit of time thinking about what that is and craft that for the jobs that you really seek. Doing that as opposed to just pressing send all day on the same generic resume will yield far better results.
And give us an idea as to how to get around the weak move of sending an email saying, hi, never say just, hi, I'm checking in to see if you you saw my resume. How can you send a better initial follow-up?
So you've hit on one of my pet peeves, Joe. It's one of the reasons why I love you so much. We think alike. The phrase "I just wanted to check in" should really be banned from every email that's ever sent. Someone should build a filter that just automatically deletes that because it just diminishes whatever you're saying. Right, the person receiving that is like, okay, well, I'm just not that interested in this email. What you want to do is follow up in meaningful ways, right? To send additional information. So what you could say instead of "I was just," why don't you say, "I've been thinking a lot about our conversation. And particularly when you describe this part of your business, I did some more research on it. And I saw that you're working on these 3 potential clients. And let me tell you about how I can add value to that effort." I mean, that's an amazing email. That's an email that gets read, that gets noticed, and I think should generate more interviews.
So, Steven, such a battered labor market right now, millions of Americans out of work, and you talk about getting an employer's attention. What can you do to separate yourself from the pack right now in the pandemic?
Well, I think the best thing that candidates can do, the biggest favor that candidates can do for themselves, is really just to apply to jobs that they're well qualified for. I think during periods of elevated unemployment, which we have right now, although the situation is definitely improving, many candidates sort of feel desperate, and so they apply to a lot of jobs, even ones that they're not qualified for. Leads to even more depression. It becomes a negative cycle where you think that you're never going to get a job, so you apply to lots of jobs that you're not qualified for, then you never hear back from anybody, and that seems to confirm your worst fears. The truth is that if you just spend more time on identifying jobs that really are a good potential match for yourself, and then tailoring your resume and making it clear that you can add value to this company for this particular job, will lead to less applications being sent out, but more interviews and greater success in the long run.
What suggestion would you have for business owners, small, mid-sized business owners, for writing a posting for LinkedIn or Indeed.com for describing what they're looking for?
Right.
I'm sure you've seen a lot of bad ads.
So almost all the bad ads are one trait, which is they're too long. Right? There's a listing of 20 different qualifications. It's the kit. They throw the kitchen sink at it, and candidates then feel the need to send a resume that's loaded with every possible qualification to try to nail those credentials. And the truth is, if you sat down with that small business owner and said, "Look, I'm sure everybody wants everything, but what are the 3 things that you just have to have? What are the 3 most important skills and traits that this candidate needs?" And just include those in your job description. And then you can start screening from there, as opposed to sending out a kitchen, because people say 20 different requirements, most of which are probably not all that important to the actual job, but tend to confuse candidates. And so candidates are left not really knowing what the essential aspects of the job really are. If you really want to get the best candidates as an employer, you want to make sure you want to emphasize the things that are most important to you. So I would urge employers to go through their ads and really editing out what's essential from what's really a wish list, and just to put what's essential. and start there. You can always weed out later, but make it clear that these are the things. This way, I think it's easier to attract the good candidates that way. Really good candidates don't want to spend a whole lot of time going through really long job descriptions. They know they don't have to. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You want to send up a flag. We're seeking the person who is the best at making outbound sales calls for our company. We want a killer person who can sit at home and make 100 calls all day and has a close rate of 20%, whatever it is. Everything else is sort of gravy. So I would emphasize what's most important.
How valuable is LinkedIn to employers, Steven?
Well, I think it depends on the employer, but generally speaking, even if the employers are not using LinkedIn to capture new candidates, they're almost certainly verifying their candidates by looking at their LinkedIn profile. So for candidates, that means make sure your profile is up to date. Make sure you have a picture on it, because research shows that candidates who have a picture on their profile get like 50 to 70% more interviews than candidates who don't. And then make sure all the information on your LinkedIn profile totally matches what's on your resume, because obviously that's a red flag as well. And I think so. It's hard to say. I think smaller companies are probably using LinkedIn more to try to find candidates. I think it remains to be seen, though, in fact, how much sourcing of new candidates is being done on a place like LinkedIn. I think at the end of the day, most companies find their new hires from networking, right? If I was a small business owner today, I would be sending out emails to everybody in my company, telling them the kind of what needs that we have. I'd be incentivizing them to suggest good candidates. And there's a lot of great incentive programs out there now, and they work really well. And also, from the major job boards. But as we all know, you get some good candidates there, but it also means you have to sift through a lot of irrelevant resumes as well.
Steve, two quick last questions. What advice do you give to somebody, as you referred to, is just down, they haven't hit anything, they're getting discouraged, and they just need a boost? What do you tell those people?
So I would tell those people two things. Number one, most of all, I'd say start making yourself accountable to somebody else in your search, because the person who's feeling that way, it's totally understandable. I think searching for a job it's very frustrating. It's so easy to get down and depressed. I see it happen with so many candidates. So approach it like you would a job, and give yourself assigned hours where you're going to be searching for a job. And that can't be 8 hours a day. People who say that, it's too hard. 3 or 4 hours a day, focused on your job search. And just like a real job where you're accountable to your boss, make yourself accountable to somebody else in your search. Again, every day or then every week, talk to your spouse or a friend and spell out exactly what you did that week, how many emails you sent out, kinds of jobs you applied for, why you applied for them, how you tailored your resume. And that rigidity, that approach to a searching for a job, like having a job, will lead to much better results. And then say to yourself, after the 3 or 4 hours a day, you're done, and don't search with no guilt, no fear, no depression. Go do other things that keep you energetic during the time that you are searching for a job. That rigorous approach will lead to better results in the long term. And then the second part of that is, don't just send out your generic resume. Again, I can't emphasize this enough, because I see this with candidates who fail, who shouldn't be. Many people are really good at their job, but they're not nearly as good at job search, right? So their resumes don't even indicate how good they are at their job. That's because they're using a generic resume. They put everything about their whole life on a piece of paper. And that's too confusing for employers. Employers are not impressed by that. They're not energized by that. But candidates think it's great. And so they spend all day clicking send, and they just apply to one job after another, and employers don't respond.
And finally, Steve, your advice for the business owner who says, I can't find anybody with the skills and qualifications that I want.
Right. Well, that is a challenge, right? Even during periods of high unemployment, we hear from small business owners and large companies that they still can't find the candidates that are a good match for them. And I think this is always really interesting for candidates to hear, because I think the candidates think, oh my God, companies are swamped with great candidates for every job. The truth is they're not. They may be swamped with resumes, but they're not swamped with the right candidates for many jobs. And that's why it's so important for candidates to be really judicious and focus on what they're best at. And for employers, that means, again, shorter job descriptions, which are less confusing to candidates and which will attract less candidates, but more of the right candidates that you want. And then also having it, incentivizing your staff through, have a referral program that incentivizes your staff to send good potential candidates, which tends to work really, really well. Those are really good things that small businesses can do.
Friends, I told you at the beginning, Steven Greenberg was the best and the smartest job change career expert who I know. And it has been great to talk to you. You really got me fired up on this topic. Thank you very much. Steven Greenberg, WCBS expert on job changes. He's on the website. I'm on the website. Neil is on the website too sometimes. And thank you very much. And I can't wait till we all see each other back at the radio station again.
Me too. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Neil. Great talking to you.
Thanks.